is the belief that a Jewish ethno-state should exist in
What you're 1,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago? Is that how this works? You know, no one who isn't, at least on some level, a liberal Zionist would use terminology like that. So, oof, we're not getting off to a good start here.
So if you ask the vast majority of Jews all across the diaspora, the vast majority of them are going to agree with that statement.
Okay, so that would make them Jewish supremacists. Because as you said, it's the belief in the existence of a Jewish ethno-state. That is a state by Jews, for Jews, as an ethnicity, giving them ethnicity-based privileges over other groups of people based on their ethnicity, okay? So that's Jewish supremacy. If you agree with that statement that there should exist a Jewish ethno-state, you're a Jewish supremacist. Yeah, of course. Like, what if you were to say, white supremacy is the belief that there should exist a white ethno-state in blah, blah place? If the vast majority of whites agreed with that, then that would make them white supremacists, wouldn't it? Surely you understand how you're creating like a special exception here for Jews, right? Because you're uncomfortable with the notion that Jews can do ethnic supremacism just like anyone else. Like, how is there possibly a but to this? Well, let's find out.
However, if you ask them, and this is the key here, what means ought to take place in order for such a state to exist? You understand what I'm saying? It's like asking black people,
This is like trying to make a distinction between liberal Zionism and other forms of Zionism. There's no distinction. You're still a Jewish supremacist if you're a liberal Zionist. You can't support the existence of a Jewish supremacist ethno-state without being a Jewish supremacist. What's the point here?
Do you believe that we should get reparations? Hell yeah, nigga, of course we do.
I mean, that's not even the same thing. That's literally not even the same thing. Like, getting material reparations for slavery or some wrong that has been done to you is not the same thing as wanting to go somewhere, kick out the people who are already living there, form and then maintain a Jewish supremacist ethno-state. These things aren't even on the same planet. Those two things are so different from one another that I can't believe the comparisons being made here.
All right. What means do you believe that we should take to achieve that? And this is what gets into the Jewish supremacy portion of it. Because when I hear Jewish supremacy, I hear a Jewish parallel to white supremacy. And white supremacy, I've defined this several times in the past. Any form of supremacy that you're talking about, this is what it boils down to. White supremacy specifically is the belief that white people are inherently superior to non-white people. And therefore, all non-white people exist for one of two reasons. Is to either be subjugated by or exterminated for white folks, specifically straight white men's interest. So when you say to me Jewish supremacy, what you are saying is that you're talking about Jews who believe that Jewish people are inherently superior to non-Jewish people, specifically Palestinians, and that Palestinians exist for one of two reasons: to either be subjugated by or exterminated for the interest of Jewish people. So if you're going to argue with me that the vast majority of Jewish people, I'm not talking about exclusively Israelis, I'm talking about Jewish people throughout the diaspora believes that, I'm calling bullshit.
Okay, so you're going to need data for this. You're going to need some proof of your claims. Firstly, let's deal with what he said, the vast majority of Jewish people. So Israelis are around 50% of the Jewish population in the world. So you can't simply exclude them. They are Jews too. They count as a part of this global Jewish opinion, right? Nonetheless, there's plenty of evidence which supports the idea that the vast majority of Jews in the world today are Jewish supremacists. Now, as you saw him say there, correctly I might add, Israel is a Jewish supremacist ethno-state. You know, it's a state that is founded on the colonial subjugation and removal / killing of another group of people in order to form a state there for one other group of people. That's obviously supremacist for that ethnic group, and the ethnic group in this case is Jews. So if you support Israel, you support the existence of Israel, you support the existence of this project, which this guy said, like, of course most Jews are going to support that. Like, what? No, I don't think it's natural for most Jews to support that. But anyway, we can look now at how many Jews, what percentage of Jews support that, and we can say, based on that, if the most of them are Jewish supremacists or not. Because obviously you can't support a Jewish ethno-state, a Jewish settler colonial ethno-state, based on the subjugation, killing, oppression of an entire other group of people because they're not Jewish and not be a Jewish supremacist. Otherwise, what the fuck could Jewish supremacism even possibly mean if not that? So this is a very good article that I highly recommend. It's not only about this subject, it's rather about the idea of Jews being like this especially innately oppressed group of people, which simply isn't true. It's on this Substack by Tariq Aknikolos. I'll link it down below in the description. But he goes over all the statistics on this in a nice little organized fashion that you can come back and reference for yourself later. So let's go through polls here. So 73% of American Jews say they have a favorable opinion of Israel in this poll from March 2025. That's American Jews, not Israelis, American. 74% support US military aid to Israel. 89% say they have a favorable view of the Israeli people. 85% say that they believe it is important for the US to support Israel. And 57% say they feel even more connected to Israel after October 7th. Those are clear indications that these people support Israel, which, as I said, is a Jewish supremacist state, thus making them Jewish supremacists. And on other groups of Jews outside of the US, 65% of British Jews outright identify as Zionists. Now, to be clear here, Zionist has become something of a toxic label lately, so a lot of Jews have stopped identifying openly with that label. Nonetheless, when they are asked their actual opinions on the matter of Israel, they will still say, like, oh yes, I support the existence of Israel, Israel should remain a Jewish state, that sort of thing. So it's obvious that they are Zionists. So when I say Zionist here, I'm not specifically going with self-identification here. Like, if you ask a Nazi, are you a Nazi? Most of them nowadays are going to tell you no, okay? They're going to try and hide it. They want the plausible deniability. It's the same with Zionism now, which is a good thing. That means progress is happening. But nonetheless, they are still Zionists because their actual political belief system is the definition of Zionism, okay? So 78% of British Jews are somewhat or very emotionally attached to Israel. 50% are very attached. 47% said they have become more emotionally attached to Israel after October 7th and the Gaza genocide, and only 19% have become less attached. 65% disagreed that Israel's conduct after October 7th weakened their attachment to Israel. 51% disagreed that Israel's conduct after October 7th classified with their Jewish values. In Canada, while only 51% openly identify as Zionists, 84% say they are very or somewhat attached to Israel, and 94% said they support the existence of Israel. Of German Jews, 77% consider connection to Israel to be an important part of their Jewish identity, 91% have visited Israel, 94% consider solidarity with Israel important, 87% said they support Israel regardless of the behavior of the Israeli government. You know, you get the point here. The point here is that what we're talking about, like, are the majority of Jews Jewish supremacists right now? Do they hold Jewish supremacist political beliefs? This is a question that is answered by looking at data, by looking at evidence, by looking at facts, not by making a video ranting in your car about your feelings on this matter, okay? It's a very simple question. As you acknowledge yourself, Israel is a Jewish supremacist ethno-state. Okay, great. Supporters of this Jewish supremacist ethno-state thus are necessarily Jewish supremacists. And the statistics show that the vast majority of Jews in the world support Israel. Thus, the vast majority of Jews in the world are Jewish supremacists. It's an extremely simple equation, and you have to spin yourself into knots trying to get around it. So let's see what he has to say.
Period. I'm calling bullshit. And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why here. Again, going back to the Zionism piece. By the definition that I gave you, technically speaking...
Yeah, you said ethno-state. You said ethno-state. The definition that you gave us acknowledges that Israel is Jewish supremacist.
The majority of Jews throughout the diaspora would qualify as Zionist, right? However, only about 1 in 3 Jews self-identify as Zionist.
Yeah, because as I said, it's a toxic label. People see Zionism now as they see the word Nazi. You don't want to be labeled as a Zionist. So this is just complete red herring, because what does Zionism means? It means what you said, the support of a Jewish ethno-state in Palestine, on Palestinian land at the cost of Palestinian people. That's what it actually means. So anyone who supports that is a Zionist. It doesn't matter whether they identify with the label or not. It doesn't matter whether the label has become an insult, so they decided they don't like it anymore. That is what it is. You don't get to argue semantics here. We argue facts. And you're doing like twists and turns to redefine what Zionism means in order to deny the factual basis of widespread Jewish supremacy in the Jewish community, which can only be fought if you acknowledge its existence in the first place, rather than just arguing semantics to try and get around it.
For whatever the case may be, for, the connotation that comes with it, because, Zionism to them is deeper than just that,
Okay, what is it? What is it then? Tell us. What is it? It's deeper than that? What could that even mean if it was deeper? There's more to it? I mean, it doesn't matter if there's more to it for them or not. It doesn't matter if they have some deep spiritual connection to Israel while also believing in a Jewish supremacist ethno state. That reasoning doesn't matter. If you support a Jewish supremacist ethno state, you're a Jewish supremacist. That's all you need to say. That's all there is to it. It's not more complicated than that. It's just ludicrous. It's like trying to argue that someone isn't a Nazi because they support the existence of a Nazi German state for occult reasons, rather than but truly believing in the racial ideology of Hitler or some shit. You're fucking kidding me.
Flat out definition like that. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I don't. It doesn't make sense.
All right, then. So if only that portion believes, and then you also you also have to start delineating now.
Why?
Because the younger you get,
why do you have to start? Why? Why do you have to make special exceptions? Why? Why is it not relevant that 80-90% of Jews worldwide support the existence of Israel, which is a Jewish ethno state, and thus are clearly Jewish supremacists? Why? Why do I have to make special exceptions for specific groups just to make that statement? Why do I need caveats here? That's a really fucking weird thing. Is it just because this sort of makes you uncomfortable? Is that it? Is it because acknowledging reality makes you uncomfortable because you believe in Jewish exceptionalism? You believe that Jews are like this magical special group of people who can't do wrong. So you need something that makes you feel better about the sad reality of where the Jewish community today actually is at. You need to point to exceptions and be like, aha, I gotcha. It doesn't matter if there's an exception when we're talking about the existence of Jewish supremacy and its prevalence among the Jewish community. There's always going to be exceptions. Not every German was a fucking Nazi in World War II. In fact, less Germans were Nazis than Jews are Jewish supremacists today. That's an insane stat, but it's true. But no one in the middle of World War II was adding a fucking asterisk whenever they said, fuck the Germans. We're fighting the Germans. I hate the Germans. Because they were the enemies in that moment. Most of them were on board with the Nazi ideology. Most of them were enthusiastically on board with Hitler. Most of them supported what Germany was doing. And in that moment, no one gave a single shit about making a special distinction. Because them and their abhorrent racial supremacist genocidal beliefs were what needed to be fought in that moment. And they were fought and they were defeated. I have to think, what could your motivation possibly be for being so desperate about trying to prevent us from applying that exact same process to Israel?
I'll use a perfect example of this talking point. And again, this is what I be talking about niggas don't need to have an opinion on every effing thing, man. I'm going to bring up this point again because I'm working on something now talking about this whole, black people who enlist are race traders, black people who enlist are class traders, blah, 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 blah,
okay,
blah.
Okay.
And people who love using that talk.
I'm not at all surprised that this guy is making a video defending people who join the US military to mass murder people abroad for their own personal advancement. Obviously, he sympathizes with those people. I'm not at all surprised that someone who can't denounce American war criminals without asterisk about how poor and victimized they are and how because they are poor or supposedly victimized in the context of the US, which isn't true, by the way. Statistics show that the US military is predominantly middle class. That apparently gives them the right to voluntarily sign up to go overseas and massacre way poorer people than them for their own personal advancement rather than just getting a job at fucking McDonald's or Walmart or whatever like a normal person. So really not surprising to me that he's on board with that idea as well. Though I'm not sure why the fuck he's even bringing this up. If you want to provide an example here, why don't you show us some data? Why don't you leave your car, make a video at a more opportune time, and when you're on a computer, and you show us some actual data, some proof, rather than just making shit up off the top of your head. Just a suggestion, because I have a lot of data here that shows that what you want to believe is not true. And you do not seem to be able to deal with the simple facts at hand here.
They love using, 60% of enlistees come from middle-class households. Mind you, middle class, by definition, you can technically be middle class and basically be working poor.
No, no, you fucking can't. Americans are crazy. Americans are fucking crazy people.
You understand what I'm saying? Matter of fact, if you look up, and I'm gonna give y'all the source in the script in the video itself, but this is from the military themselves saying that not 60 but 64% of enlistees come from middle class households, and they define middle class households as anybody, not an individual now, a household that makes anywhere between, I believe it was 40 and like $85,000 a year.
Okay, so let's say you make $40,000 a year in your household. Shock, horror. My friend, how much money do you think the Afghans they kill make a year? I'd be surprised if they even make $400. $40 might be closer. Do you get what I'm saying here? This is so absurdly out of touch with the global fucking reality. You are, even like at the lowest of the low in American society by your standards, $40,000 a year. That's an absolute luxury. Oh my God. But if you make your family makes $40,000 a year, that puts you easily in the top 10% of glowing living standards. Minimum. Immediately, it puts you there. So for you to come here and be like, it's really complicated. These people voluntarily sign up to go and kill people who make $400 a month because they're only making $40,000 a year, and that's so hard. How are they supposed to live on that? How immensely out of touch are you with the vast majority of people in the world and their circumstances for you to even say something like that? The logic is just insane. It's absolutely crazy. And I know you would never be saying anything like this if the question was, should these people be allowed to sign up and come and kill your family? Because the family is far away from you, poor, easy to dehumanize, easy to forget. For you, it's so easy for you to rationalize their murder on an economic basis, on a purely like self-interested desire for personal advancement, supposedly making that justified or at least absolving you of all the blame for it. This is just fucking ludicrous, man. American liberal garbage.
If you single and you making $50,000-$60,000 a year, try raising 2 kids on your own and pay.
I guess if you're only making $50,000-$60,000 a year and you got 2 kids on your own, you got to go and kill other people's kids to make some more money to feed your children. Is that how this fucking works? Would you kill your neighbor's kids if you got paid? If it took you out of your supposedly terrible circumstances where you're only making $50,000 a year with 2 kids? There's no logic to this. There's no sense to this. It's a pure emotional response because he's an American supremacist, I might add. No one can make this sort of argument unless they are an American supremacist. And he just wants to defend his in-group being able to do basically whatever the fuck they want to anyone they want. That's where this comes from. There's nothing else to it. So let's see him actually get to the point.
down by age. I promise you, the closer, if you ask a Jewish person how closely they're tied, how close their identity is tied to the Israeli state. Because I'm going to get to that, to the importance of the symbolism of Israel to Jewish people in a second. But if
it doesn't matter if it's the symbolism is important, dude. How does that fucking matter? There's nothing that can justify ethno-nationalism. There's no symbolism that can justify it. There's no like special like absolving motivation for supporting ethno-nationalism that gets you off the hook for supporting it.
If you ask them, the older they are, the closer they are to being a Holocaust survivor. All right? The closer they are to being a Holocaust survivor or being the child of. If you the more the
Okay, so he's trying to justify the existence of Israel in support of the Israeli ethno-state with the Holocaust.
It's a separation you have, you feel me, from Kristallnacht and all of that shit, Auschwitz, Dachau, all of that. The further you become divorced from that, the less of a connection to that Jewish ethno-state that they have. So if you...
For one, this is completely untrue. Even after the Holocaust, the vast majority of Jews in the world were not Holocaust survivors. This is pretty intuitively obvious if you think with your brain, because 6 million of them had just been killed. If you go to the average Jew who's 90 years old, they aren't a Holocaust survivor. Not even close. In fact, most of them are going to be Middle Eastern Jews who had nothing to do with the Holocaust. So this is just false, and it can't justify it anyway. What? Because you were a victim of an attempted genocide. That means that you then get to go and support or carry out, in many cases, a genocide against another people yourself. The logic here doesn't fucking add up. It's a purely emotionally manipulative justification that doesn't hold up if you think about it for 2 seconds. These people, if anything, should know better than others that what they're doing is wrong because it was done to them in some cases, but they don't, do they? They're carrying it out when they know fully well how wrong it is firsthand. So this is not a justification. It's not a mitigating factor at all. It's not an excuse, but he wants it to be one.
Ask somebody who's like 90 something years old. Yeah, almost definitely the vast majority of them, their identity is very closely tied to Israel. Now, if you ask somebody my age, it's more likely they don't give a fuck, to keep it big.
That's not true. Still, a majority of younger Jews support Israel. So firstly, in Israel itself, which again houses around half of the Jews in the world, it's where they live, it's where they colonize, it's where they settle, it's where they brutalize, it's where they oppress. Younger people are actually more right-wing than older people. 58% of first-time voters in Israel aged 18 to 22 identify as right-wing, compared to 44% of Israelis aged 23 and older. So that's half of the world's Jews who are actually getting more right-wing, more supportive of the Israeli ethno-state than before. And outside of Israel, let's use the US as an example. Here's a Pew Research poll. 52% of American Jews aged 18 to 34 believe that the way that Israel is carrying out its response to Hamas's October 7th attack is acceptable. This was at the height of the genocide, by the way. Jews aged 18 to 34, 48% said that Israel's reasons for fighting Hamas, aka committing genocide in Gaza, were valid. 45% outright support the Israeli Netanyahu government. 61% support US military aid to Israel. Look, I could go on, but you get the point, right? Just because there are certain demographics of Jews in the world where if you look at them, they support Israel less, I don't understand how this absolves the overall fact of the clear problem of Jewish supremacy, which Zionism is in the Jewish community. Like, you can point to outliers, you can point to differences in opinion in certain demographics, but the wider point is still true. And it seems like you can't deal with that wider point, so you're just pointing to what you view as potential exceptions, which we're supposed to take as absolving, which we're supposed to respond to by saying like, oh, well, I guess what we've been saying just isn't true anymore. What does it matter exactly, right? If 61% of American Jews 18 to 34 support Israel rather than 78% of Jews as a whole, how exactly does this matter to us? It's still a near plurality. I can't wait to find out. Hopefully it tells us.
And even if they do, now let me explain to you why they do.
Like, what is the point of explaining? You can explain all you want. The problem's still there. The reason why he's explaining because he wants to make an excuse for it. He wants to brush it aside. He wants us to not talk about it. That's his reason for it.
Those of y'all in my audience, my Jewish viewers or whatever, y'all can feel free to connect me. But this is based off of my experience, my interactions with Jewish folk over the years. Some my age, some older. The best way I can describe the way that Jewish people see themselves in the world. There's a scene in the first season of Sopranos where...
Oh my fucking God. I asked you for data, I asked you for evidence, I asked you for anything but citing a scene of a television series, please. Oh, fuck. Oh, whatever, I'll listen to it, man. Oh, fuck.
Jewish character, Hash, he says to Bokeem Woodbine, who made a guest appearance, he says, my people were the white man's nigga when y'all was still in Africa painting your faces and chasing zebras. First of all, that line was way out of pocket, but I ain't gonna hold you. I did laugh when I heard it. Second of all, that is how they see themselves.
Firstly, that's completely untrue. Totally, completely, 1,000,000% untrue.
In Africa painting your faces and chasing zebras. First of all, that line was way out of pocket, but I ain't gonna hold you. I did laugh when I heard it. Second of all,
I ask you for evidence, I ask you for anything but citing a scene of a television series, please. Oh, fuck. Oh, whatever, I'll listen to it, man. Oh my fucking God. I asked you for data, I asked you for evidence, I asked you for anything but citing a scene of a television series, please. Oh, fuck. Oh, whatever, I'll listen to it, man. Oh, fuck.
Jewish character, Hash, he says to Bokeem Woodbine, who made a guest appearance, he says, my people were the white man's nigga when y'all was still in Africa painting your faces and chasing zebras. First of all, that line was...
Oh, fuck.
Jewish character, Hash, he says to Bokeem Woodbine, who made a guest appearance, he says, my people were the white man's nigga when y'all was still in Africa painting your faces and chasing zebras. First of all, that line was way out of pocket, but I ain't gonna hold you. I did laugh when I heard it. Second of all, that is how they see themselves.
Firstly, that's completely untrue. Totally, completely, 1,000,000% untrue. Oppression of Jews in Europe was not even remotely close to what has been done to black people in Africa by Europeans, Jews included, by the way. Jews were involved in European colonialism all around the world, so there's not really that much of a distinction to be made there. But you say that's how they see themselves and this justifies it, so they have their own supposed little narrative of oppression, and that justifies them killing other people. Did you know that the Nazis saw themselves as oppressed too? The Nazis saw themselves as the victims of like a Jewish conspiracy to keep Germany down, and like they saw themselves as being oppressed after the end of World War I. You know, they'd been kept down from being able to claim the full extent of their rightful racial homeland and all of this shit. They saw themselves as victims too. Victim narratives are extremely commonly used in settler colonialism. None of this matters at all. You're taking the justifications of the colonizers, of the ethno-supremacists, and presenting them as legitimizing. None of this shit matters at all. Whatever justification they use for their abhorrent ethno-supremacist beliefs, they're not justified. White supremacists believe themselves to be victims too. They believe that they are currently undergoing a great replacement. They believe that their people are presently being replaced and they are the greatest victims of the world. Should we abide by this in any way, shape, or form? Even if it were true? It's obviously not, but even if it were? No. Of course not. We shouldn't give this shit any fucking water. Nor should you. What are you doing here?
As the original nigga. The Egyptians nigga, if you believe the mythology about the Exodus story.
Well, it's not true. None of that is true. So no, I don't.
The Assyrians, the Medes and Persians, the Greeks, the Romans.
No, I mean the Jews in the Roman Empire basically took over. They just converted to Christianity. They changed their version of their religion to a new one with a new Messiah, because Christianity at that time was just a Jewish sect, basically, and they took over the Roman Empire in the end, so...
The Russians, the Germans, whoever the fuck else, the Americans, that's how they see themselves, is as the perpetual underdog.
And it's just, not only is it not true, but even if it were 100% true, as claimed, it wouldn't be a justification for having an ethno state, a Jewish supremacist ethno state at the cost of others.
There's a reason why the most important dates in the Jewish calendar.
This guy is just a straight up philo-Semite. Like, there's no other way to describe this. This is straight up philo-Semitism.
Around overcoming a seemingly insurmountable obstacle, overcoming some sort of oppression. You understand what I'm saying? By the literal grace of God and by the strength of their collective cultural identity.
Most Jewish holidays are actually extremely dark, like based around them killing people, based around them committing genocide.
A accountable obstacle, overcoming some sort of oppression. You understand what I'm saying? By the literal grace of God and by the strength of their collective cultural identity.
Most Jewish holidays are actually extremely dark, like based around them killing people, based around them committing genocide, based around God killing, for example, every non-Hebrew firstborn in Egypt for them. Purim is like a celebration of Jews preemptively killing 75,000 enemies of the Jewish people. You know, I could go on, but I think it's very weird to cite these things as positives. These are bad things, right? Like a religion based around so many holidays that are based on like killing and murdering and genociding your enemies isn't a positive thing. And I think it takes a very philo-Semitic brain to present this as something that's not only not negative, but also legitimizing of an ethno state and the mentality of the people who support that ethno state.
Is how they view themselves. As the perpetual underdog. You understand what I'm saying? When you talk to Jewish people about their place in America, talk to a Jewish person and then talk to some.
Hell.
Talk like an Italian American. An Italian American, you feel me? And I'm not just saying that just because I've been, binge rewatching The Sopranos, but because I grew up.
Yes, you are.
In a predominantly Latino, but historically Italian neighborhood. You talk to Italian people and they'll talk,
They're not Italian, dude. They're fucking American. Oh my God, this is American. Like, I'm Italian because 5 generations ago, my great-great-great-great-grandpa was. Love.
Italians, we built this country, Christopher Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, and Marconi invented the radio and all this and whatever and whatnot.
Get to the fucking point, please.
Jews don't talk that way. You understand what I'm saying? Jews look at themselves and they move as strangers in a strange land.
He's just straight up reciting all of the Zionist mythology that is used to justify the existence of the Israeli ethno state. This is a pure Zionist narrative. Like, he is reciting to you verbatim, absolutely 100% verbatim, the Zionist narrative for why they should get to have an ethno state. Jews are supposedly rootless people who are out of place everywhere and can only ever, be comfortable in a place where they should be if they have their own little ethno state that's only for them. This is not only Jewish supremacism, but it's an anti-Semitic narrative. And I don't care about anti-Semitism nowadays at all. Obviously, it's not a big issue, but you're talking about like Jews look at themselves as strangers. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing for them on their part. That they look at themselves as strangers unless they can be living in an ethno state that's only for them. I can't believe you're citing this as something that you think legitimizes this narrative and them being Zionists.
Because that is who and what they have been for, I guess, the last 2,000 years, at least since the Hasmonean dynasty, I guess. That is how they have moved. And that is how they have viewed themselves. You understand what I'm saying? Is expats, right? So it's for this reason that the establishment, the importance of Israel.
There can be no valid reason for believing in a Jewish supremacist ethno state. There can be no reason for it. Everything that you're saying to legitimize it is the Israeli narrative first and foremost, the propagandistic Israeli mythologized narrative of history first and foremost. And even if it were true, it couldn't legitimize what you're claiming it legitimizes. It's not an excuse, but you're using it as one. Okay, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit more here, because it is a kind of unstructured car rant video, so we might need to get through it a little bit faster for this video to end up being even a remotely reasonable length.
The vast majority of American Jews, and this is the important part. The importance of Israel is not material. The importance of Israel is symbolic. The existence of Israel is symbolic of how much and what they have overcome as a people.
So if you view a genocidal ethno-state, a genocidal Jewish supremacist ethno-state, as an important symbol to you of how much you have overcome as a people, that makes your support of it fine. That makes your support of it good. No, it fucking doesn't. Like, if there was a white ethno-state, or, you know, what if people saw Rhodesia or whatever as symbolic of what the whites had overcome as a people? A lot of Boers think this way as well. A lot of South African Boers consider themselves like historic victims of the British, for example. They have this narrative where they came to South Africa with like nothing, and they built it up for themselves, blah, blah, blah. They went through so many hardships. They were then oppressed by the British, and they overcame it to become like, you know, one of the dominant groups in South African society. It's symbolic of how much and what they've overcome as a people. Does that justify it? Does that make their beliefs in racial supremacism okay? Does it? No, it doesn't. None of what you're saying here justifies what you think it does. None of what you're saying here excuses what you think it does. Even if we take it 100% at face value, which you shouldn't, but for the sake of argument, I'm willing to, none of this justifies what you are meaning to justify with it. Ethnic supremacy, Jewish supremacy, which is what Zionism factually is, cannot be justified by a victim narrative. Every single racial supremacist or ethnic supremacist project that I have ever known of has always had a victim narrative backing it. This does not justify it at all.
Is how much is... I always use this to describe the experience of blackness across the diaspora, but it's the shared experience of cultural trauma, and more important than that, triumph over that trauma. The establishment of a Jewish state is symbolic of that triumph. And that...
For this man, the mass expulsion and killing of Palestinians from their own land by Jewish supremacists is a triumph. For this man, the continued oppression and marginalization of Palestinians is a triumph. Why? Because Jews see that, and I guess what Jews think and say goes. This is fucking unhinged and insane. I cannot... Like, how do you say this stuff and not understand what it sounds like to anyone who understands the situation even slightly? You're living on another planet for me.
Is why an Israeli state matters to them. That said, they ain't going to colonize over there anytime soon. And that's the important part that I want to get at. Because I've heard people say things like, oh...
For one, that's not true. According to polls, Pew Research poll here, 45% of US Jewish adults have been to Israel, including 19% who have visited once and 26% who have visited multiple times or have lived in Israel. Over 50,000 foreign nationals are IDF soldiers right now. 50 fucking thousand. The broader Jewish community in the world, given how overtly Zionist it is, and the institutions are even more Zionist than the individuals are a crucial element of support for Israel. Even if they don't go there themselves, they support it overwhelmingly, materially, diplomatically, with propaganda, and they support it with recruitment, etc. Like the average synagogue in the US, if you go there and ask, hey, can you guys help me join the IDF? They will help you. You go to the average Jewish community center and you ask them, hey, can you guys help me to learn about how to migrate to Israel? They have all the resources that you could ever need for that. So not only is it just a big lie to say that they're not going to colonize, because a whole lot of them do, but even those who don't either assist in the colonization of Israel in whatever little way they might, or are outright actively involved in helping with it, as is the case most of the time with the actual institutions. So what you're saying here is a fucking straight up lie, whitewashing the complicity that the Jewish community outside of Israel has in enabling and supporting Zionism in Israel, even those who don't choose to colonize Israel, which they could do by virtue of being born Jewish.
Oh, well, I'm pretty sure, Palestinians, won't have a problem with Jewish supremacy. I'm pretty sure that, the Palestinians that are dying, all due respect, no disrespect to my Palestinian brothers and sisters. But we're not talking about Palestinians. We're not even talking about Israelis. We're talking about American Jews.
Yeah, and we're talking about American Jews who believe overwhelmingly in what is being done to those Palestinians and who materially support it in basically every way where they ever possibly could. Many of them who go over there and colonize Palestine and victimize those Palestinians firsthand, almost all of whom identify strongly with the state of Israel, propagandize for it in at least some way. Like, you're trying to form a disconnection here when the disconnection is nowhere near as profound as you are trying to make it sound like.
You understand what I'm saying? We're talking about people who have no material, no physical connection to the neo.
As I just went over, this is completely wrong. It's basically impossible to participate in American Jewish, institutional Jewish life without having a material connection to Israel. And as I said, 45% have a physical connection. We're not even getting into those who have family and friends who live there with that 45%. That's people who legitimately went there.
Colonial vassal state that is Israel. You understand what I'm saying? And y'all sitting here and saying shit to them like, oh, you know, and white people at that, that's the thing that throws me. And not even spicy white like Hassan. I'm talking about people who your entire cultural identity is genocide, nigga. Your entire, nigga, you're American. You know, you're British. You feel me? Your entire identity, your entire cultural identity is based on the extermination or subjugation of. So sit this one out. That's my thing, is have a seat. Have a seat.
Okay, so you can't refute the actual facts here. So your argument is instead, rather than arguing as to how those people are wrong, you're just like, you're not allowed to say that because you're British or American. It sounds like you can't actually defend what you're trying to defend here, so you're just going for like this, what you imagine as this cheap identity politics win. Like, what the fuck does it matter if someone's saying this, if they're right? What does it matter? What does it change? It doesn't change fucking anything. If someone denounces this mass Israel and then, on the other hand, claims to be a victim of some sort when they're an American making $60,000 fucking dollars a year, at that point, it's just like, oh, give me a fucking break. Come on. You know, the only problem that you have with Israel is that you're not a part of the club. So yeah, ironically, this sort of argument of like, oh, come on, you're the wrong person to be making this claim actually applies more to you. Not based on your identity, but based on your beliefs.
Dog, if anybody's going to be leading this conversation, then let it be the Palestinians.
Do you think Palestinians disapprove of people denouncing the Jewish community's complicity in their repression? I don't think they fucking do. So maybe you should sit down and listen to Palestinians. I've never had a single fucking Palestinian tell me, oh man, get in your lane. We don't need you denouncing Jewish supremacy. We don't need you denouncing Zionism. What the hell are you talking about? This is just such a dumb fucking argument. Americans are just ID poll fucked in the head, man.
You shut your mouth. You don't have to. And this,
I guarantee you, way more Palestinians would want you to shut your fucking mouth here. But you're talking anyway, aren't you? You don't seem to care.
I know I'm going on a digression here, but again, shout out to Professor Sky, but this has not left my mind since he said this. But it's just something about white folks in a white supremacist society that just feel like they need to take possession of something. You understand what I'm saying? That feel like they got to be involved some way, some shape or form. How they got to, you feel me, center themselves. Even if they say they're centering these people over here, no, they're not. They're using those people as a scapegoat to be able to get their thoughts off. They're using that as justification to be able to say what they want to say with impunity. That's what that is.
So they're using the issue of Palestine to get their thoughts of Palestine out there, and this is white supremacy. What the fucking hell are you talking about, dude? Like, unless they're using it to talk about something unrelated, your argument here doesn't make any fucking sense. It just sounds like your whole argument is pointing at them and saying why. You gotta be better than this. You gotta have a better argument than this. There's nothing to what you're saying at all.
You understand what I'm saying?
No one understands what you're saying. It's totally nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense at all. If a white person announces Zionism in the correct terms, it doesn't fucking matter if they're white. It doesn't matter if they're black or whatever. It doesn't matter if they're purple. Doesn't matter if they're green. The problem that you have is clearly with what they're saying, but you obviously are incapable of refuting it, so you're just pointing at them and saying, you're the wrong person to be saying this.
So I get at that to get to this. If you want to make the argument that the vast majority of Israelis, if you want to make the argument that the majority of Israelis are not only by definition Zionists, because they're colonizers. Let's keep it a bean. That's who and what they are, is that they're colonizers. And I'm gonna get to this in a second. If you want to make the argument that they are Jewish supremacists, all right, I ain't gonna hold you.
But do you even believe that yourself? Do you even believe that yourself? Doesn't sound like you do, because you're saying that other people make that argument. That's not even like the bare minimum. And it sounds like you don't even believe it yourself. So what's going on there?
So if you want to make the argument that the majority of them, you feel me, won't be satisfied until every Palestinian is either subjugated or exterminated, then all right, I ain't gonna hold you. But again, we're not talking about Israelis. We're talking about Jews outside of Israel. So when you start saying shit like the vast majority of Jews, period, are Jewish supremacy, or Jewish supremacists rather, now you want some bullshit. You're on some bullshit.
As I showed, with all the statistics that we've gone over, that is just factually true. Now, as you yourself acknowledged, Israel is a Jewish supremacist ethno-state. Okay, so the vast majority of Jews support the existence of Israel as a Jewish ethno-state. Thus, the vast majority of Jews are Jewish supremacists, because obviously a Jewish ethno-state, particularly a Jewish ethno-state in land that is taken from other people, can only ever be a supremacist project. You support a project of ethnic supremacism, you're an ethnic supremacist. In this case, the operational ethnic supremacy is Jewish supremacy. Thus, you support that, you're a Jewish supremacist. It really is that fucking simple. Imagine seeing like a white guy who supports Rhodesia and being like, he's not a white supremacist. He just has spiritual reasons. He just has symbolic reasons for supporting it. This fucker would never sit there and just nod to that. But that's the argument that he's making here. It's fucking ludicrous.
Because again, the majority of Jews my age and younger really don't give a fuck, to keep it a bean.
Again, we went through the statistics. This is completely untrue. The majority clearly are Jewish supremacists still. Even if it's a lower rate than the older generation, that's still Jewish supremacists.
And even the ones that are older, again, their connection is symbolic more than anything else.
That's so completely fucking untrue. Just again, I went through the statistics. 45% have been to Israel. 26% have visited multiple times or lived there. 50,000 foreign Jews are in the IDF right fucking now. That's not even counting the hundreds of thousands of more who are veterans. Almost all Jewish institutions worldwide, easily 95% plus, support Israel with the participation of their members. The Jewish community supports Israel materially, with propaganda, diplomatically, in every way, shape, and form that you could imagine they could possibly do, they do it. So you're saying like they have no effect on this at all? No, they clearly have a massive effect. The support of the Jewish community abroad for Israel is part and parcel with Jewish supremacy in Israel itself. You can't disconnect these two things. Without it, Israel would have a much harder time justifying itself and its existence. And the countries in which they live would have a much harder time justifying their support for Israel. And a reason for that, I was going to get to this later, but I guess I'll bring it up now. The reason for that is because of people like you. This guy is a pure Jewish exceptionalist. What that means is, he believes that Jews are this exceptional people who are basically borderline magical. They are magically oppressed regardless of the facts and circumstances of the time period in which we're actually in, where Jews are not oppressed. I went over earlier. Please check out this excellent article that totally refutes any notion that Jews are some sort of oppressed group by Tarek Aknikolos on Substack. It's going to be the first thing that I link in the description to this video. I'll also pin a comment, I suppose. But Jews are obviously not oppressed today, not even slightly. If anything, being a Jew in this day and age is a privilege. It helps you, it doesn't hinder you. But this guy is basically brain fucked by Jewish exceptionalism, which, as I said, instills in you this notion that Jews are this magically oppressed people, and the purpose of this, the whole reason that this idea is spread and exists, is to help to legitimize Israel, because if Jews are especially magically oppressed group of people, then surely they deserve to have their own little ethno-state that helps to drum up support for Israel. So this guy, he believes in that notion, right? He believes in this idea that Jews are this special group of people who basically cannot do wrong, and even if they do somehow do wrong, they can't be blamed for it. We must deflect the blame to something else. But then he sees Israel, right? Israel is pretty fucking horrible, and Israel is a Jewish ethno-state that is supported by the vast majority of Jews in the world. And this causes this massive attack of cognitive dissonance, like, I believe that Jews are this magical, special people who can basically do no wrong. So how do I permit myself to oppose Israel without challenging my Jewish exceptionalism? And the way that a lot of these people do this is that they try to remove responsibility from the Jewish community for the existence of the Israeli Jewish ethno-state by like what this guy is doing here, right? By trying to disconnect the broader Jewish community outside of Israel entirely from any complicity in Zionism. And only by doing this can he give himself the permission to be against Israel. Thus, the contradiction between Jewish exceptionalism and Israel as it exists and the broad, near-unanimous support among the Jewish community for Zionism doesn't have to actually be addressed. He doesn't have to address the contradiction between those things and his Jewish exceptionalist ideology.
They send money over there. They send money, you understand what I'm saying, to the...
I think it's amazing that he said it's just symbolic. He literally said, like, their support of Israel is nothing but symbolic, and then literally the next second he's like, oh, actually, they send money. They send money over there. You know, they buy weapons for IDF soldiers. They buy boots for IDF soldiers.
And even the ones that are older, again, their connection is symbolic more than anything else. They send money over there. They send money, you understand what I'm saying, to the reason why you have synagogues raising money. The reason why...
That's not symbolic support, that's material support for genocide. You know, could you imagine this guy making this same sort of argument in a circumstance that was a bit closer to home? Like, what if there was some white supremacist waving his Confederate flag? Do you think this guy would accept the argument that, oh, for him it's just a symbol, it's heritage, not hate? He's not an actual white supremacist, it's just a symbol of his culture, of his people. It's their mentality. The heritage, not hate thing is quite literally the argument that he's making, except for Jewish supremacists. He'd obviously never accept that, but it affects him, so in that case he gets it. Jewish supremacy hurts others, so in that case he doesn't.
Why you have churches raising money to send over to Israel, we're going to get to that in a second, is because, I ain't going to hold you, they've been propagandized. They've been propagandized.
Like, you have institutions, synagogues, sending money to Israel, and they're just poor victims of propaganda? Dude, you people are fucking crazy with the excuses that you make. There's propaganda everywhere. You could say that Elon Musk has been propagandized by the notion that he's a big imported Tony Stark type guy. Does that somehow absolve him of being like the richest fucker in the world who exploits people all around the world and helps to like export right-wing ideology all around the world? You know, he's just a victim of propaganda, right? Like, you're bringing this up as if Jews don't understand how Israel benefits them. They don't understand how having this ethno-state that gives them automatic citizenship, a free Palestinian house, they don't need to be propagandized to support that. They understand that it's for them, by them, it benefits them. You can't just point to propaganda, even if it does exist as this absolving thing. Like, apparently, you know, you've been exposed to propaganda, you're off the hook for fucking anything that you ever do. And he's using the propaganda, like, to justify synagogues sending money to the fucking IDF as well. That's so nonsensical. Who do you think does the propaganda? It's the institutions. It's the synagogues. My God, this is just so nonsensical and stupid. He just has an endless list of excuses that is going down. Anything but blaming Jewish ethnic supremacists for their own beliefs and their own actions. Anything but that. There's always another thing down the list that he can point to absolve them of any sort of complicity, any sort of responsibility for their own actions. Jewish people are not like disadvantaged, downtrodden, oppressed victims. They are some of the most well-educated, wealthiest people in the entire world. The idea that they're just propagandized and they don't know what they're doing as they support the fucking genocide of Palestinians is a complete absurdity already for an individual, and it's much more an absurdity when you talk about a synagogue. My God.
I hate when we do this thing where we want to act like propaganda only works one way. Whenever it's an issue that does not support our narrative, you understand what I'm saying? Oh, that's just the way that they are. That's just an organic thought, an organic feeling, an organic belief. This person is just the scum of the earth for moving the way that they do, regardless of, you feel me, growing up in an environment and in a condition that has taught them to think one way. You understand what I'm saying?
There's just such immense stupidity. Okay, so you grew up in an environment where you were taught that Israel is great and good, and now you're an adult and you materially support Israel and the genocide of the Palestinian people, but you were propagandized when you were younger, and that makes it okay, that makes it fine, you're not responsible for it. How the fuck does this work? Can you people ever blame anyone for anything? Or does this only apply to Jews? Is Nick Fuentes responsible for his ideology. I mean, he was exposed to Nazi propaganda. We can't blame him. What don't you know about like the circumstances that he was involved in, the circles that he moved in? He doesn't have organic thoughts, doesn't have organic feelings, doesn't have organic beliefs. Where do you draw the line here? It really is just coming up with arbitrary reasons to excuse Jewish people for believing in and carrying out fucking genocide. And the blame thing, by the way, to be clear, it's not even really the main problem here. The main problem is that if you perceive of all of your enemies, or maybe not your enemies, but certainly our enemies, as like poor little manipulated babies who can never be responsible for anything that they believe in, for anything that they do, for anything that they support, for anything that they enable, then how the hell are you ever going to be able to effectively fight them? You're not going to, obviously. And that's ultimately why people like this spread this sort of notion that apparently 90% of Jews can support Zionism, can outright support Jewish supremacy, but it's not their fault somehow because they don't want us fighting against it. They don't even want us identifying the problem so that we can even start to think of how we can fight this and actually achieve Palestinian liberation. They want to obfuscate what the problem is. Do you think you could combat Nazism while ignoring the existence of Nazis or making excuses for them at every single possible opportunity? Because that's what you're doing in regards to Jewish supremacy and Zionism.
Nah, that can't possibly be the case. It's just, all Jews just want it can't possibly, no, nigga, no, that's not how that works.
It doesn't matter why they believe it. What matters is that they believe it, and they are operationally implementing fucking genocide right now as a result of that.
They've been propagandized. They've been propagandized to believe that the maintenance of a Jewish ethno-state is paramount to their cultural identity. And again, the more removed you are from that, the more secular you are as a Jew. You understand what I'm saying?
No, that's completely wrong, actually. Zionism is a secular project from its very root. Zionism was a secular project. Theodore Herzl, the father of Zionism, was a secular Jew. I'm pretty sure there hasn't been a single religious Jew Israeli prime minister. There might have been one or two that I'm not coming to my mind right now, but Netanyahu is a secular Jew, for example. What you're saying here is completely wrong. The more secular you are, the more disconnected you are from Zionism. I don't think that's true at all. I think, if anything, the opposite is true. There are Orthodox Jews who are slightly more likely to be against Zionism because they believe, that not for good reasons, but because they believe that, Jews can't go and, make an ethno-state themselves willy-nilly. They have to wait for God to give them permission or some shit like that, whatever it is. So that's just wrong. And also, it's like, they have been propagandized to believe that the maintenance of a Jewish ethno-state is paramount to their cultural identity. Even if this was true, even if they are poor little victims of propaganda, how are they victims of that? How does this victimize them? If anything, it benefits them. It makes them better off because they have the option whenever they want to go and move to fucking Israel and go live in a Palestinian house, as 45% of them have done at some point. 45% of American Jews have done at some point. You're trying to frame the perpetrator group as victims on the basis that they have been apparently convinced against their will that having an ethno-state for their ethnicity is good for them. Those poor little victims. Oh, I understand them so much better now. Thanks for this.
As an American Jew, more specifically, because the vast majority of Israeli people don't even claim a religion. You understand what I'm saying? But the more secularized you are as a non-Israeli Jew, the more disconnected you are.
He's just making these endless arbitrary distinctions. It's unbelievable.
You understand what I'm saying? The more you are able to readily be depropagandized, if that makes any sense. I don't even know if that's a word, but y'all understand what I'm trying to say, right? And my thing about the ethnos...
Can you imagine being in the middle of the Holocaust and talking about how we don't need to fight the Germans? Rather, what we need to do is think about depropagandizing the Germans because they're all victims. They're all victims of the genocide that they're carrying out, actually.
State argument. It's people.
That's what this is.
Because
what do you mean the ethno-state argument? What do you mean?
I get tired of that point because yes, Israel is an ethno-state. You feel what I'm saying? Israel is a neo-colonial power. But
Israel
I keep
is
coming
a colonial power. It's doing colonialism. Where's the neo coming in?
To this point is that Israel would not exist if not for the interest of Western powers.
So what?
Not for the interest. Shout out to Extra History did, the best crash course that you want to see on how and why all of the bullshit that you see in the Middle East is going on today. You feel me? Going back to, the early 1900s with the British and the Ottomans and the French and all them other motherfuckers.
I mean, it's not wrong what he's saying, but the reason why he's saying it is to attempt to divert blame from Jewish people, because Israel is a movement of, Jewish supremacy, Jewish ethno-nationalism. So a common tactic is to do what he's claiming here. Is Israel a project of European colonialism? Absolutely, but it's a project of European colonialism for Jews, by Jews. Obviously, it gets crucial support by other Western European imperial powers. Great. How does this absolve the Jews, though? It doesn't, and the point of him bringing this up is specifically to point to that, because as I said, he's going down an endless list of excuses for why you should never blame Jewish people for their own actions, their own beliefs, even when they're doing literal ethno-nationalism and fucking genocide. And he's going so far here that he's claiming that, like, the ethno-nationalism of Israel isn't that important. It being an ethno-state isn't that important. What really matters is all this other stuff.
You feel what I'm saying? Comes from that. You feel me? I don't got time. I literally don't got time because I don't have the battery to get into it. But if you want to know what, that's what it don't got nothing to do. All the church folk and all, it don't got nothing to do with Isaac and Ishmael. It don't got nothing to do with that. But it's, again, white people effing around where they were not invited. That is why there's so much turmoil in that region.
Okay, so the Zionist project was not an idea of the British in the first place. It was an idea spurred by Jews who sought British support for it, who sought wider Western support for it, okay? Just because there's dual responsibility doesn't mean that Jews don't deserve responsibility for the Jews who maintain a Jewish ethno-state, rather, and support it, don't deserve responsibility for that.
Dig what I'm saying? What makes Israel unique among ethno-states? Because Japan is an ethno-state. And again, definitions are important. So let's define what an ethno-state is here. An ethno-state is not just a state with an extremely large homogenous population. But what it means is a state that, whether de facto or de jure, so whether just by societal norms or by law, codified in some cases, that majority ethnicity is given the preferential option over everybody else.
Uh-huh.
So you can make the argument that you can make the argument that the U.S. is an ethno-state. I mean,
no, not anymore. Not anymore.
Aside from the fact that white people are going to be a majority in the ethno-state. I mean,
no, not anymore. Not anymore.
You can make the argument that the U.S. is an ethno-state. I mean,
no, not anymore. Not anymore.
Aside from the fact that white people are going to be a majority in a couple of years, but you can make that argument. You dig what I'm saying? But again, Armenia is an ethno-state. Poland, Hungary.
No, it's not. Ethno-state means majority ethnicity upheld and privileged as a matter of official policy, or at least even if it's not written into law in practice. Most of the countries that he's listing here are not actually ethno-states. I don't get it. Like, his own definition of what an ethno-state is does not apply to the states that he's listing here as ethno-states.
Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, all them Balkan states, Serbia, Croatia.
No.
You understand what I'm saying?
No.
I remember when I was...
These countries don't meet your own definition of ethno-state. I don't understand. Like, this is kind of wild.
A teenager, there was a lot of talk, because we was over there, effing around in Iraq, right? The Kurds, you feel me, have been being persecuted for years in Iraq. And people were talking about the establishment of a Kurdish state called Kurdistan. What would that have been? An ethno-state, nigga. You understand what I'm saying? But what makes Israel...
What is that? How is that anything like fucking Uzbekistan? What are you talking about?
Unique among ethno-states is that it is the one that is made purely, that was created.
No, what makes Israel unique among ethno-states is something aside from just colonialism. I'm going to talk about colonialism here, but I'm interjecting. It's the ethno-nationalism as a matter of official policy. It's a Jewish state by Jews for Jews that privileges them as a matter of official policy over all others, at the expense of others as well, because other people were there and they were expelled, killed, had their land stolen for the benefit of this group of people, okay? Almost none of the other countries that you listed are like that. So it's a fucking, honestly, insane what you're saying here. This doesn't gel with your own definition of what an ethno-state is.
Exclusively through colonialism and outside intervention. The people that make up that ethno-state are not people, you feel me, who are native to that land, or at least haven't been native to that land for the past 2,000 years, however long. You understand what I'm saying? And why is that? This is where it all comes full circle, and this is the part that matters. Why is that? This is
where you can tell, because I made a video on this, which he's too afraid to directly address, about what Jewish supremacy versus white supremacy.
White supremacy. What y'all are calling it. This is where it all comes full circle, and this is the part that matters. Why
This
is
is where
that?
you can tell, because I made a video on this, which he's too afraid to directly address, about what Jewish supremacy versus white supremacy.
White supremacy. What y'all are calling Jewish supremacy? Nah, nigga, Jewish don't got nothing to do with it. That's white supremacy.
Okay. Israel has nothing to do with Jewish supremacy, it's just white supremacy. So, none of these people deal with my arguments on this because it just contradicts them completely. Ask a simple question here in response to this. Can a white person, who is just white, not Jewish, go to Israel and get citizenship immediately by law? Can a white person who is not Jewish go to Israel and be given a Palestinian house immediately, free by law? Would they be given a gun and have the right to hold it in the street? And if they shoot a Palestinian for fun, will they be given preferential treatment and probably not even go to jail for it or anything? Will they be allowed to do all this sort of fun stuff that you get to do if you're a Jew in Israel? No, they won't. However, what if you're these guys, these black people? You're Jewish. What if you go to Israel? You get citizenship. You get a Palestinian house. As you can see, they have been allowed to join the military and shoot. You're Jewish. This sort of fun stuff that you get to do if you're a Jew in Israel. No, they won't. However, what if you're these guys, these black people? You're Jewish. What if you go to Israel? You get citizenship. You get a Palestinian house. As you can see, they have been allowed to join the military and shoot Palestinians for sport. This is clearly Jewish supremacism operationally. By law, by practice, it is Jewish supremacism. There are elements of white supremacy to it, just as there are anything. There were elements of white supremacy to the European support of the project initially. There certainly were and still are elements of white supremacy to the European support of the project initially. There certainly were and still are white supremacist beliefs held by many of its founders and still many of its key ideologues today. But the actual state itself is not operationally white supremacist as its primary mode, as its primary contradiction. It is Jewish supremacist clearly. You know, whatever disadvantage you might face in Israel for not being white as a Jew is equivalent to the disadvantage that like an Italian faced in the USA in like 1890 or whatever, okay? You're still a part of the wider in-group, like the white in-group in the US or the Jewish in-group in Israel. You're still a member of that group. You may face discrimination on some level. You might be seen as a lesser member of that group by people who are on the top, by people who are wider in Israel or who consider themselves wider in the US or whatever, but you're still considered a part of the group. Italians were still considered white. Black Jews in Israel are still considered Jewish. They still get the privileges. They still get to lord over those who are not considered a part of the primary ethnic supremacist group. And that is why it's Jewish supremacist in the most profound, clearly operational, obvious way possible. And why it is ridiculous for you to not just say, well, okay, there's white supremacy too. But no, he's outright saying Jewish supremacy has nothing to do with it. He's not just saying, well, yeah, it is Jewish supremacist, but there's also elements of white supremacy to it. He's saying there's no Jewish supremacy, period. It doesn't even fucking exist. Tell that to someone who's been kicked out of their house so that a black Jew can live there. Tell that to them, to their fucking face, dude.
What y'all are calling Jewish supremacy? Nah, nigga, Jewish don't got nothing to do with it. That's white
Nothing to do with it.
supremacy. That's white folks. That is white people doing white people shit for white people's interest.
Would you say these women are doing white people shit for white people's interests? I'm pretty sure they're doing this because they get perverse benefits from it. They get to live in, the top 5% of global living standards at the expense of Palestinians. I'm pretty sure that's why they fucking do this, dude.
You understand what I'm saying? And when I say white, I'm also including those Jews who move like white folks.
Oh, I mean, I guess these people move like white folks and suddenly we can just blame white supremacy for this rather than Jewish supremacy that's actually operational.
You understand what I'm saying? I'm talking about the Ben Shapiro's and the Dennis Progers and the Dave Portnoys of the world.
Those people are white folks. They are white, dude. What are you talking about? There's no contradiction between being Jewish and white.
Them motherfuckers who move like white folks, who only decide to be Jewish when it's convenient, who only decide to be Jewish to buffer themselves from criticism. You dig what I'm saying? So here we go. We cannot ignore the significance, the impact of white evangelical Christianity, because that's where a lot of the money comes from here. Again, I grew up in this, man.
Okay, so this is a very common talking point that I'm just going to address here briefly because this is getting really long and I'm going to have to go anyway. So basically, the argument here is that don't blame Jews for Zionism. The white evangelicals are the ones who are really to blame. As he said there's no Jewish supremacy at all. Like, he's not even acknowledging it as basically a factor. He said there's no Jewish supremacy, it's just white supremacism. And then he brought up evangelical Christianity as the real problem, as the real ones who are to blame. It's funny too how he started this video, at least earlier on. He said like, oh, this is just a way for, white people talking about Palestine. They just talk about it because they want to center themselves, or no explanation as to how the fuck that's supposed to work. Ironically, what he's doing here is centering the discussion around American domestic politics, around things that are familiar to him as someone who's incredibly ignorant of the broader world, of geopolitics, of basically anything beyond his own nose. He understands everything through, like, white supremacy as it exists in American society, and thus it surely isn't possible that the primary responsibility for Israel is on the actual perpetrators of its atrocities who carry them out in the name of Jewish supremacy. No, no, no. In fact, Jewish supremacy doesn't even exist. The people who are to blame for this are white American evangelicals. Jews basically have nothing to do with it. They're totally absolved. So he's doing what he was accusing others of doing 1 billion times worse. Every single fucking thing in the world for him is understood through the context of the ignorant American who can't look beyond their own nose, who doesn't care to learn about anything aside from their own country. They see everything through their own contradictions, through their own history, and they can't digest that maybe things are even slightly different elsewhere. So again, this is just a purely Jewish exceptionalist argument that's coming from someone who wants to remove all blame from Jews at all, to the point that he's outright denying the very existence of Jewish supremacism, which is a fucking ridiculous joke. And that's where this sort of thing comes from. But it's also just a massive red herring. Yeah, white evangelicals who are Zionists are to blame for their belief in Zionism. They're to blame for whatever support they give to Israel, all that sort of stuff. But this isn't the root of the problem at all. Israel has always been supported by the West as a geopolitical calculus. The evangelical obsession with Israel comes much, much, much later. Only really started getting big in the 70s and the 80s after it was already established anyway. The US and other Western countries don't support Israel because of evangelicals. They support Israel, as I said, as a result of what used to be a cold geopolitical calculus and what now is looking to be something of a sunk cost fallacy. The evangelicals have really barely even factored in. Support by the Jewish community outside of Israel has always been way more important than theirs, specifically because of Jewish exceptionalism, because of the sort of thinking that this guy engages in. And it's really easy to see when you understand it, because when you have a bunch of people who believe that, Jews are like this special group of people who can do no wrong and need to be given special deference, as this guy clearly does, which is why he wants to absolve them of any sort of responsibility for Israel, basically, then it's really easy for you to be manipulated when you see, as we do in the vast majority of the West, the Jewish community supporting Israel so vehemently. Because if you believe that Jews are special people and, basically what they say goes, and you see a bunch of Jews who tell you, we support Israel, Israel is good, you're way more likely to support Israel yourself. And that has been the primary role of the Jewish community outside of Israel, to give that idea, while also helping to spread the notion of Jewish exceptionalism in the first place, a sort of two-pronged strategy. And it works extremely well. It's worked so well that this guy right here can't even give himself permission to denounce Israel without adding like 1 billion asterisk about how basically no Jewish person bears any responsibility for it because, they just support it for symbolic reasons, or they're just propagandized victims, even as their synagogues send money to the IDF. This whole video is just a big deflection, really. There's someone with very undealt with Jewish exceptionalist sentiments that need to be dealt with, because if we're going to fight Israel, how the fuck are we going to be able to do that when we have a bunch of people who consider themselves in our movement, who seem to think that Jews are like these magical human beings who can't carry out the exact same ethnicity justified atrocities that any other ethnic group could carry out in the right circumstances. That if they support ethno-nationalism, there must be some sort of absolving context, and actually it must be the fault actually of the evangelicals. And of course, Zionists of all stripes, Jewish or not, are responsible for being Zionists, are responsible for having an abhorrent ideology and for supporting Israel. But you absolutely should obviously focus on Jews, because Israel is a Jewish supremacist state by Jews for Jews. clearly supported, as the data shows, by the vast majority of Jews worldwide. If you include Israeli Jews in the number, it's almost 90% or more. Which you should, because obviously Israeli Jews are a part of the world. Why would you just get rid of 50% of the world's Jewish population when you're calculating these statistics? It's still like 80% if you don't include them, by the way. 75-80% minimum. There's clearly a difference to someone supporting an ethno-nationalist project that they are themselves a beneficiary of or a potential beneficiary of, and others who support it for their own reasons. There's clearly a difference between like being a direct participant in it, as I said, 45% of Jews in the US who aren't even from Israel have been, and literally participating in it yourself as someone who that project is by and for, okay? And the only reason you're not acknowledging that is, and the only reason that you're not able to acknowledge that in this case, as you would with like a white supremacist project like Rhodesia or whatever, is because of Jewish exceptionalism. And Jewish exceptionalism is what we really need to fight here, right? We don't need to fight white evangelicals or whatever. They aren't the prime villains here. The prime villain, more than anything else, that keeps us from being able to effectively fight Israel still today is Jewish exceptionalism. This just childish idea that Jews are not like other people and they can't do horrible things just as other people can. They can't carry out ethno-supremacist, colonial, genocidal projects just as any other group of people could in the right circumstances. We're never going to be able to fight Israel when you are so averse to even acknowledging the reality of what Israel is, who it's by, who it's for. And when you're willing to say, oh man, fuck these white evangelicals, but you can't say fucking shit about the operationally much more important global Jewish community support for Israel, not just that, but you outright defend them by making a billion excuses for them, as they provide absolutely crucial propaganda cover for the Israeli settler colonial genocidal project, as it does genocide right now, then we clearly have a problem, don't we? There's clearly a contradiction going on there, and it's not a rational one. It's one based on the magical thinking of Jewish exceptionalism. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to link the Substack article by that Tariq fellow, which is very good, in the description here, but I'm also going to link another Substack article that I wrote regarding Jewish exceptionalism, what it is, how important it is that we acknowledge it and fight it, and why. This guy is a great example of Jewish exceptionalist thinking that prevents him, it's not just him, this is tons of people have it. I'd say most people in the West think like this, but it prevents you from being able to even acknowledge the reality of what Israel is. And if you don't, if you're so averse to acknowledging reality, how could you possibly effectively combat Zionism, right? How could you possibly effectively be a useful partner in the fight against this? So yeah, this guy is a Zionist. He might not realize it, but he absolutely is one. A liberal Zionist, still a Zionist. And I think a lot of people need to learn that just because Israel is supported by the West, by the US especially, the US, out of all of the countries that support Israel, is obviously the most responsible. It doesn't mean that the primary responsibility is not with the actual perpetrators still. I'll say that about any situation as well, In Argentina, for example, in the 70s, early 80s, there was this dictatorship. It murdered 30,000 people. Everyone in Argentina knows that the dictatorship couldn't have existed without crucial American support, and Israeli support as well, by the way. But still people blame the actual perpetrators. They blame the Argentines who carried this out in their country, more so than they do the US. We know the US supported them. We know they couldn't have existed without the US, but they were still the ones who carried out these acts. They were still the ones who implemented them. It was ultimately their plan, their desires that were being carried out. We don't remove the responsibility for them, as this guy does. We don't say there's literally no Jewish supremacy. It doesn't even exist. It's all white supremacy, even when it's codified into law. We don't talk about how the perpetrators don't deserve any of the blame for it because they were propagandized, or because it's of symbolic importance to them to support these crimes. It's all illogical, and that's because it's all Jewish supremacism. There's no logic to it. It's magical thinking, the sort of magical thinking that I would hope that anyone who watches this guy and actually bought this stuff would go away and think for a bit and try to interrogate. It's very important that you do, because if you don't, we're never going to get anywhere.
聞く価値もない価格守る視線と来たる
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome. Hi, the Genshin Impact 6.5 Phase 1 banner review. Linnea is coming out. Chaska is coming back. And more importantly, that's Idlua. How is he back so soon? That's crazy. But yeah, so we obviously have Idlua, Aino, Noelle as the 4-star lineup. And then we have the respective signatures for Chaska and Linnea, as well as Flower Wreathed Feathers, Lion's Roar, Dragon's Bane, Sacrificial Greatsword, and Eye of Perception. Well, first of all, we have Linnea. And Linnea, I would say, probably marks the equivalent for Nodcry as what Mawika was in Natlan. All the other very powerful releases that we've seen throughout the Nodcry cycle have been incredibly powerful. I mean, I've talked a lot about how much the lunar power creep has kind of cooked the meta, but Mawika was so far ahead of the competition on her release, and then obviously when Yeonzon came out and made her teams better, that as strong as the lunar carries were, they weren't necessarily stronger than Mawika. Very often they got to similar levels as Mawika, and obviously situationally stronger, and the Sigin content has favored the lunar carries over Mawika because that's what's getting released. So they have also been played just more because content has been more favorable for them. But it was really just like filling out the Mawika level tier of damage with a bunch more shit. But Zabai was there without Linnea. And, well, Linnea makes her team quite a bit better. Right now, the content for these teams is kind of getting harder at the same rate as the DPS is getting higher, which is making it really, really difficult for older carries, supports, anything to really feel good. They have at least kept Stygian in a stage where like there kind of always is one pushover boss where like maybe the shield mechanic is strong, but there's like cheese stuff to kind of cheat the DPS requirements, or the shield mechanic is strong but the DPS requirements are pretty low, so it's really not too bad if you know what you're doing, right? So if we look at the recent Stygians, there was a field generator that had really high DPS requirements, but that had a lot of tech with the 600% attack buff, and obviously you had the pushover bat, and then the Emperor of Fire and Iron was a bit more restrictive, but there were quite a few characters that could take advantage of some of its mechanics to like significantly reduce the DPS requirements. Characters like Molani, characters like Nebiret, but also just kind of any team that could slot in decent AoE Hydro application could kind of just brute force this. And then in this Abyss, you have the Mandragora, who, as potentially painful of an experience as the Mandragora can be, you can kind of solo the AoE phase with effectively just Sucrose, burst, fall damage, and just a little bit of extra damage. So pretty much any team that, and again, right, I'm talking about Fearless for now, pretty much any team that could break the shield in a way that wasn't too slow, even much lower DPS teams,
冒険者協会の顧問をしています。この子はルミ。私の仲間です。野外冒険について知りたいことがあったら何でも聞いてくださいね。そうそう。冒険中に何か不思議な生き物に出会ったら忘れずに教えてください。
can kind to take care of it. And if you look at the next abyss, you have the Papilla, who's got like a pseudo similar thing where it's an older boss, so the DPS requirements just aren't quite at the level as they are now. But if you look at this boss, right? You look at this boss, a Radiant Moongecko. Radiant Moongecko is going to be the hardest, maybe not the hardest, but it's definitely going to be one of the hardest bosses we've seen in Sigin. It's got a lot of things that are going to make your life difficult. And the only teams that are going to be able to, like, when it comes to Fearless, clear with a comfortable amount of time to spare are going to be the Dubai teams. I've seen a lot of videos from the content creator server, and I've seen people getting 115, 116 seconds clear using Linnea on the other Geocarry teams. So with the way the power creep is shaping up, I'm a bit worried. It's getting more and more difficult to keep an account at the level where they can reliably clear Stygian without going for pretty much every archetype.
いざ参ろう。まさか用もなく呼んだわけじゃないよね。
装備の点検完了。やっ頭上を焼く。
行こう。はっはっ。風の行く先を、風の流れる方へ。風を知れ。それ。欲しいなら君にやるよ。ふん。ついてこいなんて言ってないよ。天へと前へ。
止める勇気はあるか。やっ。加速するぞ。はっ。マイラ、属性を見下ろさん。遅い。ついてこいなんて言ってないよ。
止める勇気はあるか？加速するぞ。
また後で来よう。今は他を探索しよう。
風よ遅いついてこいなんて言ってないよ遅い天へと前ついてこいなんて言ってないよ遅いついてこいなんて言ってないよ属性を見下ろさん天へと前やっついてこいなんて言ってないよ遅い属性を見下ろさん天へと前遅い遅い
アクセル全開。 止める勇気はあるか。脅威排除。
風よ
やっ加速するぞ。もうええよ。そこだ。突破口を開きましょう。観測攻撃。引け。太陽の本能を。散れ。はあ。冒険の褒美だな。いい記念となる。止める勇気はあるか。やっ
参るいざはっふっしっ風よせいそれはっ参る
加速するぞ。
行こう。いざ。しっ。
我が心を見極めるがいい。
武器を捨てろ。気をつけて。
物語は始まったばかり。
もっと早く、もっと強く、ジャスティス。行くよ。ヒーロー決断。
記録し見定めよ。
ヒーロー決断。
試練は終わりだ。我が心を見極めるがいい。
逃がした
採血の
全部与え
今が好機。光の裁きを生む。
ご挨拶します。
騒ぐな。
記録し見定めよ。罰を下そう。
正々堂々
排除せねば。
頼んだよ。
見定めよ。
次のもとに。
手ぶらじゃ帰れない。舐めないでください。
同じだ。
全ては摂理と星から生まれる。
静粛に討伐となるがいい。
神の炎。
神戸を垂れろ。行ってあの黎明の光を。
ご挨拶します。
採血の
騒ぐな。
記録し見定め。試練は終わりだ。我が心を見極
舐めない
めるがいい。
でください。
光の裁きを受ける。
逃がした
採血の
それがディグナノーグより刺さる。
記録し見定めよ。
やれ黎明の光を。
れならどうです
騒ぐ高き者私は下げず
採決の時記録し見定めよ
そうくる褒美を垂れろ油断した
全部与えるの
全ては摂理と星から生まれる
アド
灯火のもとに
お望み通りに行って
騒ぐと
獲物はあんただ
神の炎に動きの全てを差し貫け死亡よれ
私は帰ってきた
採決の時
光の裁きを
ご挨拶します
排除せねば記録し見定めよ
頼んだよ
灯火のもとに
結晶のごとく光り輝け行って気をつけて
褒美を垂れろ
我が心を見極める
騒ぐ
行ってアド黎明の光
ご挨拶します味方だ
採決の時
借りは返した
定めよ我が心を見極めるが
正々堂々奪う
頼んだよ
灯火のもとに
行って好きくらい
記
の
録し
静
見
粛
定めよ
大松となるがいい褒美を垂れろ
獲物はあんただ手ぶら
記録し
今だ
見定めよ
黎明の光を
お望み通りに舐めないでくださいこれならどうですか
全ては摂理と星から生まれる
高き私は下げず
神の炎よ動き全てを差し貫け試練は終わりだ
星とし無事今日の
喜んで。
楽しい旅になるといいね。気晴らしに出かけましょう。その間に熟成されて美味しくなるわ。
いざ参ろう。
何をすればいい？
騒ぐな。
光り輝くがいい。じゃじゃーん。
剣女盤石。大末となるがいい。聖書。
お披露目だ。
風よ。騒ぐな。海に私は
歌え、僕の名のもとに。
神戸を垂れろ。それ難攻不落。高き私は下げず。岩山八。騒ぐな。
光り輝くがいい。じゃじゃーん。
参る。剣女盤石。神戸を垂れろ。風よ。大末となるがいい。騒ぐな。参る。聖書。
僕をたたえよ。歌え、僕の名のもとに。
風よ。岩山八。海に私は帰ってきた。騒ぐな。参る。
お披露目だ。
せい。剣女盤石。神戸を垂れろ。
せい。やっほっとさあ
And I've seen people getting 115, 116 seconds clear using Linnea on the other Geocarry teams. So with the way the power creep is shaping up, I'm a bit worried. It's getting more and more difficult to keep an account at the level where they can reliably clear Stygian without going for pretty much every archetype. Because if you don't have the characters that are good at dealing with the Gecko Shield, it's gonna be rough for you. Again, it's not out yet, so obviously I haven't had the chance to try alternative strategies against it, and I try to do that every Stygian. I throw my head against the wall with the non-shield stuff as much as possible to try to see if there's anything I can make work. I think it's going to be really rough for the Gecko. And it creates this weird reality where I think that even someone who cares about the meta at this point in 2026 should start considering skipping very strong meta units, because honestly, especially if you're free to play, you just straight up will not be able to get enough primos to get all the shill characters. And because we don't know ahead of time what the future shill content will be, like we can think about Nicole, who's supposed to come out next patch. If the Nicole shill boss ends up being really difficult, and Nicole's best team intended for that boss is the Varka team, it is very possible that if you don't have Varka, you won't be able to clear the boss. Or at least it'll be really difficult, and if you don't have really good artifacts, you won't be able to clear the boss. Which means that if you want to be able to clear every Stygian, you would have needed to pull for Varka, who's honestly just not a very appealing pull on his first run. All of this to say, the power creep is so bad at this point that I think even meta players should start considering skipping meta units and just accepting that there just might be some Stygians you're not able to do. You're missing out on one feather if you don't do difficulty 5 Stygian. It's not really the end of the world. But anyway, Linnea, obviously, pretty good. Only at that level of pretty good if you are going for the full Zabai premium. If you're not, then she's kind of similar to a lot of the other characters. Like the Binea wheelchair is a little bit stronger at its peak compared to the Binefa wheelchair, but its peak is a lot less versatile. The only way to get like max value wheelchair is a little bit stronger at its peak compared to the Binefa wheelchair, but its peak is a lot less versatile. The only way to get like max value out of the Binea wheelchair is to build your team in a way that takes full advantage of the Lunar Crystallize by generating as many Moondrifts and Moondrift Harmonies as possible by just applying a ton of Geo and Hydro. But that obviously means that you need to build your team around doing that. Whereas the Binefa wheelchair core is a lot more versatile and it's not too far behind the peak, and it's obviously quite a bit higher than, you know, if you try to force Binea into teams that don't do Geo or Hydro stuff. So if you're not going for full Zabai premium, Linnea is obviously still a pretty good unit, but she's not quite as appealing, I would say. And if you are someone who just really wants to clear every Stygian, do wait until you see some experimentation before feeling forced to go for Linnea, especially if you don't have Zabai. But yeah, I think that's enough about like the general health and state of the game and Linnea's value if you don't have Zabai and you're not planning on getting her. If you do have Zabai, obviously Linnea is a pretty good upgrade. You might have Zabai and no Columbina, if that's your case, if that's the situation for you. Getting Linnea is not too different from getting Columbina for your Zabai teams, but Ilua is on this banner and unlikely to be on Columbina's rerun. So I would say that you're probably a little bit more incentivized to pull for Linnea than you are to pull for Columbina. That's obviously assuming that you don't have any of the other lunar teams. If you have the other lunar teams and you want flexibility, then obviously Columbina might be better anyways. Another nice upside, if you specifically, again, don't have Columbina, is that this banner also has Aino on it, and Aino without cons is completely worthless in these teams, like significantly worse than any other Hydro, because this is a team that has 4 Nodcry if you're using Aino, right? Zabai, Linnea, Idlua, all Nodcry. So the Ascendant Gleam effect that gives you lunar damage when a non-Nodcry character uses an ability won't activate from Aino, but it would activate from other Hydro characters. Now, Columbina is strong enough that she more than makes up for that. Aino just isn't. Honestly, even C6 Aino isn't that much better, and Aino kind of feels awkward to use, so I'd probably still